Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, here to talk all things round 20 about my team, answer the relevant questions for ins and outs of your sides that have been sent through, and talk a little bit of draft stars. But before we get into that, as always, check us out on all our social media platforms, Supercoach Insider 100 and Swiz 26 to get in contact with us via Twitter, and the YouTube in particular. We've also got Spotify, TikTok, SoundCloud, everywhere where you download your podcasts. Thank you, as always, to Splash Vodka for all their ongoing support and all the fans out there who continue to support this channel each and every week. If you haven't already, also check out Fancast AFL, where myself and a few other guys get together and talk all things footy. If you have any questions for that, feel free to send them in. All right, for my team this week, 25-77, which I'm pretty happy with. The only thing was having Wines on field instead of I had to take Will Day off because I thought Dawson and Sinclair would score better than them, which they did. Originally, Wines was going to be off the field, but with Butters, the injury concern, I was a little worried about that. And so I kind of played a little bit of Russian roulette there and unfortunately did not work out the way I wanted. Wines had a really poor game and Butters actually got through and had a massive first half. Really did slow second half, so that's how it goes. Probably cost myself, 43 points with that decision. And then the captaincy, I was pretty happy with that. I had the VC on English, the only one that really I was potentially could have been a consideration was Sicily up against the Tigers. 171 was huge, but yeah, I was naturally, once English got that 134, I was going to take that. So I think I moved up about, you guys will probably have it there, but I think it was only about 30 or 40 spots, but 817 overall. Again, kind of hoping on a little bit of more carnage. Like Laird out was handy, but a lot of the people who were ranked higher than me had cover for that already. So I was a little bit disappointed because Marshall was meant to be a late out and he ended up playing and played quite well. He played quite a lot more forward time, but the impact late there was some big goals. So as a non-owner, that didn't work out, and apparently he has got through training, so it looks like he'll play. Laird is back, so that is good news for owners there. There's a little bit of concern today about Dunkley, so that's going to be a little bit of a watch. The other watches at Port Adelaide, so apparently Wines, Pal Pepper, a couple other names there who have come down with the flu. Really good for Butters and Rosie owners. If none of them play, Boak was already going to get rested, so big opportunity there for those two Port midfielders, and as well as the Adelaide midfielders, Laird and Dawson. I would love to sit there and say I'd put a sneaky VC on one of those guys, but there's quite a few other options this week, so it's hard to ignore tonight with Nick Dacos. Only the 99 last week, came home really well. Can see him definitely rebounding and going very well, and I think he'll be a popular choice tonight. Tommy Stewart's one that I'm finding it really hard to ignore tomorrow against Fremantle. I think that's where I'll probably go, but most likely I'll be actually at the Ballarat game watching the Bulldogs GWS this week, so I don't know if I want the player there or not. I don't know if I want to cheer my vice captain or is it going to take away from the experience of being out there with the boys? So maybe I'll just go Stewart because English and Bont were, and as you can see at the moment, I've got the captaincy on Bont, so I was thinking Dacos into Bont, but it's really hard to ignore Stewart down against Fremantle. He has absolutely torn them a new one before. And we saw what he did last week with the 152. He can very easily go 150 again this week. But then that means what would be the captaincy option? Neil against the Suns, he has a fairly good record there, so that's pretty safe. The Adelaide midfielders, as I've said, Laird and Dawson. I usually more bank on Dawson. It's a pretty solid choice. Sicily absolutely monstered St Kilda last time, so I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing because Ross Lyon put some attention into him, but we know defenders have been going so well against the Saints this year. Jack Sinclair, if you've got Steele, really safe. I don't have LDU, but if you did and you needed somebody late in the round, he would be a good one. It's always hard to captain rucks. We don't know yet if Grundy is going to be named. It's most likely he's not. But if you had Gawn versus Soldo, so there are quite a few good options floating around this week. So we're not short of options. And I might even do it now while I'm thinking about it. So we'll go back Tommy Stewart in. Like his record down at Geelong is something else, and it's really hard to go away from him. And we might just plant the captaincy on Lachie Neale. It's not a huge turnaround, but if it looks like Stewart's going well for half time or 3/4 time, I can very easily change that. So yeah, we'll go that. Knowing it now, they've taken off Dacos. Watch Dacos go 140, and you probably should jump on. I'm very tempted to maybe captain Sicily. I think he could get another big score here. It's about, as we're starting to see now, these defenders are just coming into their own, a bit like the Rucks at this time of the year, and just kind of start monstering teams. Bont against the Giants should be pretty solid as well. So that's why I was thinking maybe Dacos Bont, because I think they'll probably be the most popular combination. Might not be the highest one, but it'll probably be the most popular. So for my team, there's not a lot I can do. It's, with the no trades and that, it's just more about who am I loopholing. Cameron's off as the emergency this week. And then I would hope that he scores well. Pitton's not a bad defensive ruckman, so he's named with DeConning up forward. I'm really hoping that's a situation because they've got the two talls and McStay up there as well, that Cox might be the one that gets subbed off if there's no injuries to the Pies. And then that gives Cameron a bit more of a free rein at it in the last quarter. If Cameron scores well, that's an easy one. Then it's most likely to be maybe a Nick Martin gets swapped there with Bennett or Roberts, and he can go into that midfield. And I'd probably take the emergency off Wines then and put it on Martin, unless there's news about a defender at one of my defenders, may be missing, but that's most unlikely. So it'd probably be Nick Martin, and then I'll just loophole there again because actually I'd probably move Roberts forward because then I can even loophole Bennett and actually loophole Martin's score into maybe a Will Day situation. So what would that look like for people at home? I'll just go here, Nick Martin gets swapped up with Roberts. Emergency comes off Wines, who looks like missing. Martin then, and Martin scores well. Will Day, off you come. It's that simple. So, this is the flexibility of having all these different loopholes in your mid-forwards and situations like that where I've got the flexibility to loop, and if a popular choice doesn't score well, now it's a bit different this week because Cameron, but a lot of people actually have Cameron. So, if he was to have a poor game and I'm loopholing him, that is a big plus for me. Or if a player misses, that's how I get my real bonus there. So we'll see. Hopefully that works out, and we will go from there. Now, in regards to what some questions people have been sending in, the big three seem to be revolved around those who have Darcy. Not a huge amount, but there was a few people holding to see what had happened there. Sam Walsh is a big one, and still there's quite a few people out there with Ashcroft who have held thinking he was going to be sort of the Dacos this year, and he has been travelling beautifully. So what do you kind of do with him? Darcy's a very easy one. Straight to Wits if you have no cash. If you've got cash, up to Gorn. I think that's pretty straightforward. If you did have Darcy Cameron, however, you could potentially lose your ruck loophole and put Cameron into the ruck at R2 and then side swap Darcy, potentially to like maybe an LDU. So that could be a little bit of food for thought, a little bit of a different thinking. But then, what would your ruck cover be? But then if you had trades, you could always then potentially move Cameron out at a later date and then bring in another ruck if something was to go wrong there. So I think that one's pretty straightforward. The more interesting one comes around Walsh, and then what are you going to potentially do with him? It's about 51k to get to LDU, 18k to get into Steel. So if you've got cash, they're the two obvious ones to go up to there. But then if you've got to go down, probably the only one is Butters if you don't have him. That really stands out, unless we're going down further, and this becomes about that 5-10 Ashcroft range. So if you've got Walsh, you can potentially go down if you've got still a couple of trades left and you want to use that cash. So the ones around that Ashcroft price, DeGoey, Tukes at 506, Jelly at 504, and Whitfield, who's been back on fire in his role. So those are the four that probably stand out the most. Josh Kelly and Tuke Miller are absolute complete value there at their price. Some other potential ones to look at, and this is also if you're in draft finals and you're looking through your waivers, especially a lot of people like to stream forwards and small forwards and key forwards, even keeper leagues. Like if you're in leagues where they don't, you might only keep 14 players, but you're playing 22 on field or whatever it is, you'll find a lot of the older players are still sitting around. So players that you need to consider coming on this run home is the Crows. They play the Suns. They've got the Swans and the Eagles in the last round, if I can read my writing. So they've got I think it's the West Coast game last round. That's going to be huge potentially for the Crows, depending on what they do and how much in contention they are. The Bombers, Sydney this week, then West Coast North. If you're looking for a potentially there's a Parish if you don't have him, and you've got the cash to sort of move because should have 3 good scores. I'm hoping Nick Martin has 3 good weeks because of that fixture. If you're looking at maybe a potentially like a Langford or a Perkins in a draft, if they're sitting there to try to target, because that's a really friendly draw. The D's have Richmond, North, Carlton, Hawthorn, Sydney. That's as easy as it probably gets for the Melbourne Footy Club. So you see the likes of your Picketts there, but for more of a classic, and if you wanted a pod coming home, still with Clary out for potentially even for another 2-3 weeks, Viney and Brayshaw, 2 players to seriously look at with that fixture. The D's are actually still need to try to win to try to get the not only confirmed top 4, but potentially even try to get 3rd. Like their perfect world would be maybe finish 4th, beat Melbourne, beat Collingwood first week of finals, and then get the rest. But then they could think of the other way of going, well, if we can finish 3rd, play Brisbane or Port, get the chance of beating them. If they don't, well, then they get the home final second week, and then the home final, but that away at the MCG against the Pies for the prelim. So the D's still got a lot to play for, and that's a really good fixture. So can really consider Brayshaw or Viney, and Brayshaw's got the dual position, so we know he can rack it up. With just the injuries and their setup at the moment, Salem's another one in the defence there. Might get a little bit of free rein coming off that half back line. So they're just left field players I'd be thinking of for Melbourne. The other 2, the Bulldogs, Giants, they got Richmond, Hawthorn, West Coast, and then finish with Geelong. But that's fairly good. So if you don't have Libbo and you could get up to him, again, you might even pick up say a Jamara. If you're in a draft league, could potentially kick a few goals. Even maybe a Norton, less likely to be floating around. But there are a couple guys who could get on. Even Waitman, as a small forward, could definitely kick bags of 3 or 4 against them for your draft finals. And the last one of good draws is North Melbourne. They do play West Coast next week, but they do have Melbourne next week, but they've got West Coast this week. They still play the Bombers, Richmond, and Gold Coast. So that's a fairly soft draw. Now I don't think North are going to necessarily come out and win a chunk of games there. They could potentially beat West Coast. They did a number on us last year and got over the line there after their change of coach, and then you never know against the Suns. I think that's in Tassie last round. There's potential there, especially that's why I really like LDU. If you've got the money for Walsh or Ashcroft to get to LDU, I think he should be your number 1 priority because, unless they put massive attention, and you don't think Melbourne's going to probably put attention. We know the Tigers don't, the Bombers usually don't. So there's potential there for LDU, 30-odd touches each week, 120 plus. He could finish on a real heater on the run home. But then you've still got your guys maybe that you can pick up in draft as well, your Taron Thomases, those sort of players that are just kind of floating around. Even maybe have a watch maybe of Zeeble. Does he retire this week? If there's an announcement about that because he's come in and said retirement and doesn't play after that, does that open up the door for a potential maybe a restructuring of players around half back? Like at the moment, Sheasel's named in the midfield. Do they do something around that? So just maybe have a little watch for North teams, especially for, as I said, for those draft players out there. Maybe not as much of a classic. That's where your LDU comes in. They seem to be the 3 really big issues with long-term injuries that people are facing. So hopefully that answers those questions that have been coming in there. in regards to Draft Stars, and as always, gamble responsibly, but there are free games to play in Draft Stars, so the prize money's not much. It's like $2.50, as in $2.50 to win it, but it is free to play that. Where then you've got the other ones that from 50 cents up to whatever amount of money you want to spend, $15, whatever. There's more higher ones if you're that way inclined. Some of the value players in that because we get the questions there. I think even at 15.8 in the ruck this week, so you get like your 100,000 spend. You're picking your 9 players, 15,800. Max Gorn playing against Soldo, Sol Ruck. If that is the case and Grundy's not named, it's hard to ignore him. So this is more as focusing on if you're going to play the entire round, but even just try to if you are playing single games. Players that you probably definitely need to consider. Riley O, 13-6 this week. Great matchup against, is it Vizzardi Vizinenti from Port Adelaide. So Riley O should have a big week. Jared Witts at 13,000 is really good value still, even if it is against the big O. The defenders, Nan Curvis played really well for the Crows last week. He's priced at 7.4. Just watch. Sometimes rookie players second game don't do as well, but he's a bit of a watch there. Sam Taylor at 9.1 is pretty well been a lock in all my sides. Even the GWS Bulldogs matchup, it's hard not to have him in your side. That's brilliant value. Wing Hagen at from St Kilda, 11.8. He has been on absolute fire. You get these players, they hit their sort of 20, 25 games, 30 games, just start feeling a lot more comfortable. He finds the ball at will. So him and Wanganeen Malira are two definitely, not just at the moment, but we've all been talking about them sort of long-term. Wanganeen Malira has definitely come on leaps and bounds earlier than what Winghagen is, but now that he's getting the opportunity, they're both going to be players that we're going to be looking at going forward in our classic and our draft teams. Midfield this week, have a look at, especially if you're playing the Port Adelaide game, Horn Francis, if Port have a whole lot of outs, if the Wines and Pal Pepper and those guys pull out, then apart from trying to load up on Butters and Rosie, Horn Francis at 9,400 is real value in that. Gaff at 10,008. There's a lot of value in that West Coast North Melbourne game. So that'll be an interesting one. I don't know, it'll be interesting to see if as many people play that Draft Stars game. Like you get a lot more people playing the Friday night, the Carlton Collingwood. But yeah, that could be a real good. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. Probably not as many obvious players, but I think that's going to have probably the biggest range of teams of all the Draft Stars. So like you see, like tonight, there'll be players who are a very popular pick and they'll be picked by 60, 70, 80% of teams where, something like that, you could see people going left field and LDU in that game will probably be picked by nearly everyone. But there's a few other, especially some of the rookie players that could definitely get off the chain. I usually like Cole because West Coast sees a lot of ball back there. With a couple of the injuries, does he come in? Do you roll the dice on some of these West Coast rookies? And also the West Coast forwards who have got pretty cheap in that game because they don't see a lot of ball. Well, this is the week that they might actually kick some goals. So like your Jamie Cripps can have big games there. Does Oscar Allen get hold of the defence and Ben Mackay and everyone down there? So yeah, that'll be an actually interesting one. Forwards, Vizienti from Port Adelaide, he's at 6,000, basement price. He only scored, like a 6 last time, I think it was, because he got subbed out really early, but he is a forward in Draft Stars, so it's good. Archie's hit some form playing against the Suns, 8-6, and then Rayner with Ashcroft out, he looks like playing midfield, and that's a good one again for your draft sides. Scroll down and see if Cam Rayner's still just sitting there because he is the one touted to play a lot more midfield time this week. And it is 8,900 or, in non-salary draft games, he could potentially be big value against the Suns. You could see him putting up in that maybe a fantasy 80 or a Supercoach ton this week. So, yeah, definitely something to think about. For those people playing those games, send us a message. Tell us how you go. Tell us if you found any other really good ones in tonight's game, and that's the big one that everybody usually logs on for the Friday night one. There is some big cash prizes. So my side at the moment sitting there, I've got McStay. He's undervalued at 8,000. Fogarty from the Blues. Taylor Adams has been on absolute fire, and I think De Goey's going to have a big game. They're both at 13,000. George Hewitt has absolutely been a steal for us, and well done to those people that picked him up in Supercoach. It's not going to change this week, just even though Chera's back with Walsh out, still should help his scoring because Kennedy's still not there either. Josh Dacos I've got at 14,000. Markov had the low game last week because of the sub. He's playing this week, so 8,400 is a bargain there. And I think Noble responds 12,400. And Pitternet looks like he's going to be the number one ruck tonight. He's sold enough for a 70, so at 9,500. And that team actually equals, I think I had exactly $0 left after that. So, yeah, it's... I might have had like $40 or whatever the salary cap, but yeah, it's I'm fairly confident with that. In a perfect world, would love Nick Takos in there, but I think he's listed at about 17,000 in this game, so it gets a bit expensive when you've got to balance out a salary cap. So a nice little challenge. As we said, also, if you've got any ideas for Supercoach and changes they'd like to see, feel free to send them in. Some good ones were coming through last week where people were talking about different trades. There was definitely one that we talked about a loan system. Sort of some good discussion online about that. So for example, last week Laird had a 1 week injury. Could you loan him and bring in somebody just for 1 week and then your team resets? And what sort of value, like at the same value or less value or something like that. So yeah, there's some really cool ideas. People talking about the reduction of trades, or could we have a separate one for 2 Supercoach sides, one which you enter for your leagues, one that you enter just for your classic, and maybe there's some different challenges for that. Could Supercoach consider maybe a paid one? Like people really like it because it's free, but would you be open to, maybe there's a Supercoach second game where, you get only 20 trades or 30 trades or whatever it is and you pay $1 or $5, or if those people who are in the gold subscription and pay for that each year, maybe we get to be put in our own league with our own special prizes each week. Could be something that Supercoach thinks about. So, well done to those people sending them in. We try to tag in Al Patton and the Tim Mitchell and the Bryce and the Phantom and all those boys there at the Herald Sun. So, we definitely try to pass them on. So we like your ideas as well. And on that, the Crown event's been pushed back 1 more week again. So we're now back to Friday, August 18th, which is the preview to, I believe, Collingwood Brisbane, which is at Marvel that night. So a bit disappointing that it's been pushed back that far, but it should be good. And Chris is still going to come down with, I think, the Dr. Supercoach boys on the weekend of August 4th, 5th. So we'll be trying to maybe do something there. And potentially maybe even Chris and I will just do something in regards to maybe at Crown or whatever. So feel free, hit us out, and we might go and watch some footy or do something like that. All the best of your super coaching, and keep sending in your questions if you have any. We're happy to answer them. Have a good weekend, guys.